Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in. You're listening to Wrestling Changed My Life.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Wrestling Changed My Life. It's been a 6-day hiatus for me where I haven't posted a new episode, but I was out in Seattle exploring Mount Rainier with the lady. But we're back. We have a great guest today. It's Tervel Dlagnev, multiple-time Olympian and world team member for the United States. And Tervel shares some pretty crazy stories today. The first is he talks about when he was at the Oregon and the Russians tried to bribe Zeke Jones. And yeah, you just have to listen to it. It's pretty crazy. He also breaks down the Sadulaev versus Snyder matchup, and then he takes us inside his mind during the 2012 Olympic semis, which did not end well for him, but it's amazing to hear him talk about that breakdown, and I really think you'll enjoy it. Quick shout out to my fan of the episode. It goes to Nate Herron out of Orlando, Florida. Appreciate you listening, brother. Keep on keeping on. Now, enjoy this episode with Tervel, folks. We'll be back with another one real soon. Okay, Tervel, welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited.
We're going to hit on the newly minted Olympic medal status a little later on, but yeah, I've been fascinated to hear that you didn't get involved with wrestling until you were in like 10th grade, and your first love was actually Pokemon. How did this all kind of transpire, and how did you get involved with wrestling so late?
Well, growing up, I didn't really, like, my parents were, first generation immigrants, and they, I tried soccer as a little kid, but I grew up, at that time, I did like 1st through 5th grade in El Paso, Texas. So my whole soccer team was like, kind of like small, lightning fast Hispanic kids. And so I was like the tall, slow white kid trying to keep up. So that didn't work out very well. I got kind of discouraged there. And then after that, didn't really get excited about very many sports. There was, my body type was probably, the only sport that fit my body necessarily at that time, before I kind of figured my body out, because I didn't train for anything. I didn't lift. I didn't work out or anything. Was maybe football, just because I was a bigger kid. But, being, Bulgarian, like it was never a thing in my family. Like, it was kind of a point of almost like my dad would like make fun of it because he didn't understand it, how it's like, that's not football. Like, soccer is football kind of deal. So didn't ever try football. And then, the reason I really got into it was eventually in high school, my sophomore year, obviously the wrestling team worked out real hard, and my plan was, go out for some kind of sports team just to get in shape, kind of just to get fit, because I was kind of chunky, and so I thought wrestling, that's all they do. It seems like they just all work out all day, so I was like, I'll give that a go.
And what's interesting to me is that obviously you're a very driven and disciplined person now, but before you got into wrestling, like, you really didn't care that much about your grades or weren't that really obsessed with sports. How did that change so quickly? I mean, what was it about wrestling that kind of brought you in so quickly?
I mean, I've always I don't know if I'm sure it's like this with anyone, but the things that interest you, you kind of go all in on. So like, I mean, school, I wasn't a very fast reader. My sister was just kind of weirdly savant-ish at like just school in general. She like, when we got here, she like skipped a couple grades. She naturally just had the ability to speed read. So she could read like, 800-page books in like an hour. I mean, I'm talking like stupid, like cartoon fast. Like she just reads down the mid. She just like reads down the center of the sentences, and her peripheral vision picks up the rest. She comprehends all of it. She was just, and I just read like I talk. I just read every word in my head, and like at a conversation. So like everything was compared to her. It was just, I was always a step behind. So I think that was just nobody's fault, but that just kind of discouraged me. I just thought, I was like, I'm stupid. I'm not cut out for this. So that's when I became like my thing was like, okay, I'll be the class clown. And so, but I had like obsessive compulsiveness, tendencies, that's why like when I got really into Pokemon cards, it's like I went all in. Like I like had decks. I had a couple different types of decks. I'd go to tournaments. I'd scout opponents. I would every single second of my day was trying to figure out how to get better. I even went so far as to like, when I ran out of money, because as a kid, you're not making money. Like I would like steal from like card stores to like get the cards I needed. Wow. I was a little scumbag, but it was so whatever it was always, I've always been like kind of try to get into something and obsess over it until I'm pretty good at it. But I don't know, something about the wrestling just, it addicted me. So it was the learning, the skill level, just the technical aspect of it was very mind consuming.
Well, it's like a bottomless pit, right? I mean, you can never learn enough about it. And it's just, for someone who's so obsessed like you, that's got to be really appealing, because you can never go to the bottom of the top level of it. I mean, you can always keep going.
No, and that's well said.
So, and I'm the same way, man. I think a lot of wrestlers are, in terms of that obsession, and my girlfriend actually thinks I probably have a problem. Like when I find something I like, I'll go so deep into it. It's kind of scary. And so obviously you did that with wrestling. And one story I found really interesting was, I think your first year involved with wrestling, Tommy Rollins and Mako met in the finals. I think it was 2001, 2002, somewhere in that era. Is that, and then 7 years later, you're wrestling Mako for your first world team. What year was that?
Yeah, that was 2009.
Dude, how the hell does that happen? I mean,
crazy, right?
It's crazy. So kind of like just talk us through that point. So I mean, obviously you went to Nebraska Kearney. It sounds like your high school's had some ties there. So you Division II champ a couple times, undefeated, Midlands champ. So you had a great college run. But then when did you decide to go to a full-on senior career, and kind of talk us through that build up to that first trials with Mako?
Well, yeah. So I did freestyle in high school. I went to Fargo, and I would try to, but that was more like to play catch up. I mean, I started late, so in my head I was like, I got all this catching up to do. So instead of just like anything, I mean, pretty much like our youth wrestling system in most places, it's like, well, how are you going to catch up? Well, just wrestle more matches. And so I'm just, in the summers, my junior and senior year, I just try to go to every tournament. I try to get another 50, 60 matches in the summer to try to, catch up on the seasons I didn't have. And that freshman and sophomore year. And so, but that was the extent of it. When I got to college, it was, exclusively folk style, work out in the room in the summers. But my freshman year, I ended up doing pretty well. I got to be ranked second ended up getting sixth. Les Sigmund beat me in the semifinals. They don't seed the Division II tournament. They kind of just like regional place it. So we were the number 1 and 2 guys, men in the semis. He like majored me or something. And then I just lost to 2 guys that one that I had beaten that year and another one that was ranked significantly below me, but had a pretty good tournament. So I got sixth, but at the time, coming in, I was like, I had a $600 scholarship, didn't even cover all my books. So I was pretty happy with being a freshman All-American. And so that was enough, I think, mentally. That's about all I could handle. I just wasn't ready to win huge things yet. But sophomore year, I kind of came in with a little bigger expectation. Ended up getting second to Sigmund, lost 1-0 in the finals. And that summer, I was like, my buddy and I were like, let's do a freestyle tournament. We were all jazzed up. I just made the nationals finals, first finals I had made of my life, right? I mean, I got 4th and 3rd in the state of Texas, so never made a finals of anything. In a big tournament, and
right.
So I was stoked. So we go to Northern Iowa for the Northern Regional, or the Northeast, whatever they call it.
Northern Plains, yeah.
Northern Plains, yep. And at the time, they had like an open division, and the winner can, qualifies for the trials. So we were like, oh, dude, we're going to go and qualify for the world team trials. Me crazy, Well, I get there, and Sigmund's in the weight because he just finished his career. He's going to go international. So I wrestle him and I tech him 6-0 first period. The old rules, win 2 out of 3 periods. So I tech him 6-0, and then he beats me like 2-1, 1-0, or maybe 2-1, 2-0. Chest locked me in the third. So in my head, obviously, just like when the old rules came out, and I would imagine every college kid that didn't really full-time freestyle did, I just turned it into a folk style match in my head. I'm like, well, I scored 7 points, he scored 4. I win in a normal match, So I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm getting so much better, like all this stuff's going through your head, like, okay, like I can. And so that kind of jazzed me up. And so my buddy knew Moza Fay, who was a couple-time All-American for UNI at the time. And so we stuck around after Northern Plains to work out with UNI team. And Tolly Thompson was a world rep at the time. So he had just came off a bronze medal the year before. I think we're talking 2006 this year. So, and then the world team trials were coming up. He was training. So, Moses was like, hey, there's a heavyweight from Nebraska Kearney here. So Tolly came in, we worked out. And he ended up liking working out with me. So he invited me to the OTC. He's like, you can come to the OTC as my training, as one of my training partners, which was really cool. And so I went and watched him if I make the world team. So I went and watched him, made the world team. And I think it wasn't, I forget where it was. It was like 2 hours north of Nebraska, of Omaha, but I forget where it was exactly. But I remember watching him. He beats Mako. And then I go to the training center, and it was like, that was my first taste of it. And so at the training center for 2 weeks, I'm wrestling with people who I considered legends, Damian Hahn, Daniel Cormier, Mola Wall, these guys that I'm watching win national, Division I national titles and all that stuff. So, and I did pretty well. I the same thing. I had a really good match with Cormier. I actually tech fouled him in the first period, 6-0, and then he beat me, something in the next 2. And then I had I just went a 4-minute go with Damian Hahn, and he and I took him down I think I took him down 3 times, but he front headlock threw me. And so in freestyle scoring, he won. But again, in my head, I'm like, well, college match, I just shut him out. He didn't take me down. I took him down 3 times. So I'm doing all these little equations in my head, but I'm like, man, this Damian Hahn, he's awesome. And so So that being said, I was like, man, so that's kind of when I decided, like, this is what I want to do full time.
And I love how you interpreted each event kind of differently in your own mind. And you said something I want to go back to is when you were a freshman, you weren't ready to win yet. Like, do you mean physically or mentally you weren't ready to win yet?
Mentally.
How do you mean? I thought that's what you meant, but I'd love to just go a little deeper there.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that it just takes, I was very anxious in close matches. I couldn't, even in Fargo, like I was still kind of the wrestler who was like I would call it performance anxiety, I guess. It was like skirted over because I was still winning quite a bit. So it was kind of brushed under the rug a little bit, but my practice wrestling was like significantly better than my competition wrestling. And I just carried a lot of anxiety because at this time my OCD was like super high. And so, I had so many little routines in my warm up that I had to complete to lower my anxiety. I had specifically, and then even in the match, it's like, if the technique just didn't feel perfect or if something felt off, I would just like think about it. And so, but in college like I said, a lot of it was brushed under the rug because I was able to win because I was just, I don't know, for whatever reason, it was good. I had a good feel for it, but it wasn't like there's a lot of matches I won that I wasn't, I didn't expect to win. I surprised myself a lot just because that I just didn't have. I think that's the biggest piece that was the most lacking from starting so late was just the belief that, and just the understanding that no one's magic, right? Because I'd see these guys win huge premier matches, and just like everyone else goes, oh my goodness, how did you beat him? How'd you beat Macklin 7 years later after you started and he was already in the national final ball? And it's like, well, same thing for me. I was like, I don't know. How did I? So that idea, even in my Fargo brackets, I remember, guys that I lost to, it was like, I would be up by like 3 or 4 and I would just have a ton of anxiety and I would just take a bad shot for no reason. And then they would, and I would just beat myself. And so it was just, I couldn't win 1-point matches. It was like, I didn't have like the piece about it. So just this idea of like, there is a stress to beating someone you're not supposed to, right? So anytime the status quo is rocked, it takes the mental toughness to progress, whether it's win or lose, right? So being able to disrupt the status quo on the winning end, it takes a mentality because it is very comfortable to almost beat a good person, right? You almost beat him and you go, well, he was supposed to kill me and it was darn close. I very well could have won. Walk away with your head held high. But the reality is a lot in those cases, when that was my story, in a lot of those cases, I just didn't give my full effort because I was complacent with that story.
Isn't it crazy to think that that's very common, that we kind of allow ourselves to get beat by one if you're supposed to get majored? I know I used to think that way all the time in middle school and had a lot of performance anxiety, and it would be some stud from Chicago and I was from nowhere and I would lose by 1. I felt good about it. And it's interesting to hear you say that because you're at the highest levels, and then you had 8 to 9 years on the world team where you had kind of a lab to play around with this and reduce your anxiety. So like, what are some key things you've learned over the years to reduce performance anxiety? Because I've heard you say that professional athletes are in the business of removing or reducing anxiety.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. The main stuff is just learning how to talk to yourself. So in those moments of delusion, because like I said, anytime you're disrupting the status quo, it's funny on the winning end, it takes toughness, and on the losing end, it takes, a reality check, right? Because if you get upset, a huge upset goes against you, you have to have the wherewithal. You have to have the wherewithal to understand that that's a momentary circumstance, right? But the tendency is, I just got upset. I'm getting worse. Something's wrong, right? Was it my environment? Is it myself? Am I just bad? All right. So all these thoughts go through your head, but you have to have the wherewithal to go, today is today, momentary decisions, I lost. Doesn't mean in the grand umbrella of my career that anything is hugely amiss, but just small diagnosis, figure it out. And then same thing on the winning end. You need to understand that at any moment, if you make the right decisions, put yourself in the right places, wrestle the position, correctly, put the pressure in the right direction. In theory, you should win that position. And if you can do that, if you can win 5-second clips for 6 minutes, you should be able to beat, doesn't matter what the guy's name is, doesn't matter how good he is. If you win every 5-second clip in a 6-minute match, you should, in theory, win the match. So just kind of like, but it's delusional when the anxiety comes and the big picture starts to hit you and opportunity. And, for me on the world team, it's like, once I got a family and once I got kids, only the number one guy gets health insurance, right? And I don't have another job. So that was a piece of it. It's like, well, if I don't win, my family's not going to have health insurance. Like all this stuff like starts to creep into your head. That's not purely the wrestling. And so you, in your own head, you have to learn how to talk to yourself, things that, like meaningful things that remind you of the one specific moment where you chose to progress in a difficult life, right? So we chose a difficult sport. We chose to pursue it to a level of eliteness, which is very difficult in anything in life. And at one point in our life, we were excited about it. I wonder, there was always everyone starts with the question, I wonder how good I can be, right? Anyone that's like passionate. I mean, some people just get forced into it and are good and fizzle out and who cares? But the thing in your life that you're most passionate about, you're going to bounce your identity off of naturally. And it's going to stress you out the most because you don't want to fail. So you have to find the triggers that in your own head talk you back into accepting the challenge that you started with, right? Not what wrestling can do for you, but the initial challenge was never, I want to be a world champ so I can get a good job. I want to be a world champ so I can make money and people can think highly of me. It was, I want to see if I can be a world champ because I wonder if I can be the best in the world, right? So it's that curious question that brings you back down to, to fight mode, so to speak. It's like, if you're curious about something, and that's why it's so much easier, not so much, well, I guess it is, it's so much easier to get yourself up for something you've never done, right? Like if you're trying to upset the 3-time world champ, we like in layman's terms, we would call it nothing to lose, right? The nothing to lose moments are much easier to motivate yourself for because it takes a lot of things off the table and it just kind of goes back to the purity of, can I overcome this challenge? But once you become the champ and you're trying to defend the title, so to speak, for the 3rd time, the motivations change and you have to, and not a lot of people try to motivate themselves late in their career the same way they were motivated early, and it just doesn't work. I'm not saying you can't be motivated. I'm saying there's just a different style, and they just try to keep the same one. Like, oh, I got him on the back, and it just doesn't work. So you just have to find the triggers that bring you back to that moment where you're sitting on the couch eating potato chips, going, I think I'm gonna. And you're watching the NCAA finals, and you're going, that's gonna be me one day, right? Well, then, fast forward 5 years. You're in the NCAA semifinals. Okay, it can be you. Do you still want to be here? Do you still want it? Here's the opportunity that you said you've been wanting your whole life. Do you still want it? Because so oftentimes our athletic story is this. Oh, we train every day, twice a day. I don't drink. I don't do drunks. I don't party. I go to bed at 9:30. I wake up at 6:30. I do everything right. I don't eat gluten or dairy. I whatever it is, I I go to, my parents take me here. I do everything. I accept every challenge. I go out, wrestle and all for the moment to be the best. And then when you walk out into the finals of whatever your goal was to shake hands, the only thing we can think is, please let this be over quick. Like, get me off of this mat. So it's a bizarre mental thing, but I think everyone does it. It's not like, the best overcome it, but it's not like, there's certain people that are just so tough they don't have it. It's like, no. They're able to overcome it or not. Some people are just so talented that they can be stressed out to the nines and they'll still win. So that's why, as far as preparation and potential is concerned, winning is not a great litmus test, because there are people that can do the wrong things and still win. So you have to and it's not reproducible. So yeah.
You seem to be a guy who kind of balance that with just measuring self-progress. I mean, you love to see yourself grow in all areas of your life. And as you kind of went through your competitive career and you were at different points where, like, you're no longer the challenger. Now you're the guy who is the reigning world team member. You probably had to measure progress in different ways than you did before.
Yeah. And that's what when you get to the elite level, it's very interesting because, there is some brainwashing you have to do. Definitely everyone, right? So, at any moment, there is a time for brainwashing. It's like when my back was hurt and I was 30 and, there's a bunch of young guys coming up, I had to convince myself, like, even though I can't work out as hard, I just can't work out as hard as them. I can still win, right? So you kind of plant your flag on different values, right? So in the beginning of my career, and most people, it's no one's working out as hard as me, right? But then in the back end of your career, if that's the only way you're allowed to win, then you better retire now, because you just can't work out like an 18-year-old. So then it becomes, well, I understand wrestling. But that's what it is. It's charting your progress in the controllables. It's always, you try to maintain, and that's why, winning's not a good barometer, because it's not necessarily under your control.
Right.
You can't choose to win, right? You just kind of do it or you don't. And so a lot of people think that, this guy went undefeated, and they say, well, of course he did. It's like there's a lot of things go into it, but yeah, I can predict. I can be a fortune teller. Yeah, I can be a fortune teller. So check this. So Jordan Burroughs will not lose to any seventh graders. Boom. But that's not him. That's not him controlling the win, and that's not me controlling. That's not, just because I said that doesn't mean that's why he's winning. It's you're just playing the odds. You're just betting the favorite. That's easy. But if at any moment you start to split hairs, you can't guarantee me even Jordan Burroughs is going to win the Worlds this year. I would bet the house that Jordan Burroughs goes into every junior high tournament in the country and wins it, no matter what his circumstances. I don't care what his preparation was. I don't need to know what he's eating. I don't need to know how his family life is going. I don't need to know how his training is. I'm just going to bet the house. But when you ask me to bet the house on his World Championships performance, I need a little bigger picture, and I still probably won't do it.
Right, like what's Sidakov doing? Is he in there? It's like so many other factors.
And so keep it in the realm of controllables. I try, and that's gauging progress, right? Your technical understanding of whatever your craft is, your ability to handle stress, your ability to force yourself to take risk under stressful situations, your levels of strength, your levels of flexibility, your levels of conditioning, your all that stuff, right? So
would you track all these little things when you were a competitor? Like, you had different kind of categories you were tracking just to make sure you knew that you were doing the right things?
You kind of, it's not like I had a notebook. It's just those are the things you think about. So when I go into practice, I always had an idea of what I wanted to get done at this practice. So whether it was engage guys in a hand fight way more, where I want to allocate my effort. Is it shot count? Is it a specific skill? Is it just general toughness? Is it whatever? So, and then I would try to not gauge my practice off of what's the score, but off of whether I completed the task and how I handled some of these situations like stress. Like, you know, if defense was my thing, and I would just try to get, you know, I'd let guys into my leg and try to wrestle defensive situations. When it got hard, did I try to hang on for a stalemate, or did I continue wrestling? When they actually took me down, did I get frustrated, or did I shake it off quickly? If something went wrong and I wasn't doing well, did I beat myself up, or did I just let it slide off? And the actual technique, was I getting taken down the same way twice, or was I changing something? Was I adapting? You know, how was my adaptability? So all these things that I could actually have a handle on, I would try to track. And that's how I would kind of try to grade my practice late in my career, because again, a huge piece of my career was me walking out of practice. I scored 50. No one scored on me. What a great practice. And it's like, well, that's not a great test, because that's just not recreatable, because that's not going to be the match with Agul.
Right.
Agul is going to be, you know, a chess match, you know, that's, you know, hard on the body. So, it's not like, it's more of like the things that you get to take home with you, right? So a lot of time, I mean, the score stays in practice. Not like so I beat, let's say, I'll go in and I beat Steve Mako in a simulation match. That doesn't mean I get to start, well, I just beat Steve Mako in the practice room. That doesn't mean I get to go whisper in Agul's ear like, hey, I beat Mako 7-0, so can I start up by a couple points? Like, no, that doesn't work. And even if it was Mako in a competition, it's like, hey, remember I beat you in practice last week, so forfeit.
Right.
Like, no. Like the score stays in practice. The things that leave with you are your decision making. So like, you know, how did I handle, like when he got it on my leg, was I like, okay, let's wrestle? Or was I like, oh no, he's going to take me down? What was my first thought? What was my thought? You know, the shot count, when I got tired, did I shoot or did I protect? All that stuff, like that, like the decision to make. Cause then when you become someone who makes good decisions, those do go everywhere with you.
One area I was really curious to learn about was the 2012 trials and the Olympics. So you talk about how performance anxiety was something that kind of plagued you earlier in your career, but in the 2012 Olympic trials, you talk about having like an eerie calm about you, and you were kind of waiting for the stress to come, but it never came in, and obviously you made the team, versus a few months later at the Olympics, you had a lot of self-imposed pressure on you. Why do you think that was? And kind of compare and contrast those two experiences for you.
Honestly, were you talking about 2012?
Yeah, 2012 trials, how you had that eerie calm, and then the Olympics, I remember you saying how you had a lot of self-imposed pressure on you, and you were kind of tight, and you just looking at it in what you said is kind of like the wrong way, so to speak.
Yeah, I just think that, so that was kind of like, I just think that was kind of like I was getting, the most honest answer, the 80% answer is, I don't know, I had not experienced that calmness before, right? So that was kind of like, you know, a God thing, you know, maybe that's what I needed at the moment. But so that's the 80%. The 20% is, I was just starting to get, reality was just starting to hit me. So what I mean by that is, all these things we've been talking about are things that you don't necessarily as an athlete want to admit to yourself, right? You don't want to admit that winning's not under your control. You don't want to admit that your hard work doesn't really guarantee you winning, right? So those are things we kind of brainwash ourselves and we lie. So those are bad brainwashings. Those are because you're operating under a lie. But we lie to ourselves by saying the person that deserves it the most will get it, and you are the person who deserves it the most. Right? It's all anxiety relief, right? There's something innate in a person that understands the reality of their circumstances. So here, the reality is, it doesn't matter what I do right now. It's what I do in the 6 minutes in the match. And And there's no amount of preparation that can guarantee me a perfect 6 minutes of decision making. I just have to literally do it then. And then afterwards I'll diagnose it. So, but everyone wants a guarantee. And so that's when our own, we start to lie to ourselves. Like, there's no one else doing what we're doing. We just are the hardest worker. Our opponents are weaker than us. They're not as tough as us. They're not, so whatever it is, it's just, we have no idea if that's true. We just say it to relieve our anxiety. And so,
even like admitting to yourself that the other guy is good at certain things, like that's a hard thing to even accept.
It is. It's very funny because it's like for a big piece of my career, it was like I could never compliment someone in my weight class. Like if you were out of my weight class, like, oh, this guy's sweet at this, that guy's sweet, that guy's just sweet all around. But even in my own weight class, I'm just like, if this guy's a 6-time world champ, it's like, well, he's not that good. It's like, oh, what are you talking about? Of course he's good. Like,
right.
Like, but you just try to like get yourself to, not deal with reality. And it kind of gives you nowhere to go, because then once you're hit with reality, you freak out because you have no answer for it. But, and the longer a career goes, the more you just kind of like settle into these truths, and you're like, listen, just because he's good doesn't mean I can't beat him, but it also doesn't mean no good to pretend like he's not. Right. So this idea of like, you just gotta deal with reality and be okay with the challenge that, some people have bigger challenges than others to overcome, but that doesn't mean you can't. So this is just on the cusp of that. And so I think that what ended up happening, just to kind of differentiate the trials, and, I think I did a lot of things right. Obviously the level of competition, it's not, the trials is our country, the world is everybody. And obviously we had really good competitors, but it was, a different weekend is a different weekend. And so like, I just had a really good string of, I went to the Urigan and had a very bizarre experience and lost in the finals. But besides that, it was like, I won my next 2 international tournaments. I won the trials without getting a point scored on me. I went to World Cup. I went undefeated. I beat a really good Iranian. I beat the eventual Olympic silver medalist from Georgia. I beat, I just had this string of like really good performances, because I think I was really putting myself, I was motivating myself in the right ways. I was going out to fight. I was excited about the challenge. But then when the Olympics got there, I think that one, my injury freaked me out. I like popped my rib out the day of the opening ceremonies.
What?
And I couldn't. Yeah. So my rib pops out, and I can't really do anything until the day I step on the mat. So I get shot up with lidocaine, and then I go. And so that it didn't hurt my physical preparation, but I wasn't mentally strong enough at the time to go, oh, that doesn't matter. 2 weeks is not going to take away your body of work. But in my head, I was just young and dumb. In my head, it was like, I haven't drilled a shot in 2 weeks. Like it's over. Like my timing is going to be off. My conditioning is going to be off. Everything's going to be off. Everything's wrong. Right. So with that, my OCD was kicking in. So at the time, I just wasn't mature enough to go, your body of work is fine. You're just going to rest. You're going to shoot it up. You're going to go wrestle. But what I did was, because again, physically, I don't remember, it didn't hurt. There was never a moment where I was like, oh, that was my rib. But what it did was mentally, it collapsed me, because it told me, you're not going to be prepared. You're not going to be ready. And now I have an excuse. So now I have a preloaded excuse at the barrel. Like if I have a bad performance, I'll just whip this sucker out and tell everyone, and everyone will feel sorry for me. And then the story on Tervel will be, he should have won, but he was injured. Right. So,
yeah.
So there's my anxiety relief, like barrel in the shotgun. So I already had this preloaded excuse, and I go out, I beat Egypt, I beat the returning world champ, and I have Taymazov, and then I'm thinking like, okay, I beat him last year, and it's all good. But again, the turnaround was fast. I just never had a favorable turnaround. But anyway, so I go in, I do remember, I remember this moment. I remember I get in on the shot and I suck his leg in, and he starts to give me defense. And I remember thinking, like, gosh, if I battle really, like, this all happened in a second. But I'm gonna tell you, like, this is what went through my head, was like, I could finish this. I could finish this with a whole crap load of effort. Like, I was in a position where if I would have, like, flexed my whole body, if I would have, like, stopped, if I would have held my breath, I could have finished this shot. I was in the position where I'm very good in extended single, and his hips were not that heavy. But I remember I wasn't willing to give the effort in that split second. It was like, I'll just stalemate this one. Like, this one's going to be this one's a little too much. It's early in the match. I'm going to stalemate. And literally the second that, like, cascade of thoughts finished, he jumped to a cradle. Like, in that one split second where I decided to not give full effort and just to hold out for a better opportunity, he jumped cradle. And he rolled through. And yeah, you could say, oh my goodness, it wasn't even close to his back, it was whatever. But the reality was, in my head, I was like, yeah, that was, I mean, there was a lapse.
They call it a pin, right? Is that?
They call it a pin.
Yeah.
Yep.
Holy, dude, that had to haunt you, because in your mind, you're like, listen, I'm in a spot where I could score here. A half second later, it's over. And did that plague in your mind for, maybe to this day, but like, what was that like dealing with that after the fact?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I had to try to get up from a bronze medal match, but yeah, I mean, like, no one else knew, right? It was like, oh, you accept the stories, like, oh, you got screwed, that wasn't a pin, that was blah, 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 oh my gosh, one-time thing, what a fluke. But the reality is in my head, I knew, like I stopped wrestling the position. Like, why did you stop wrestling in the position? And so yeah, it was frustrating. It was frustrating, but it just gets thrown to the wayside. Obviously I'm like when I thought about, every time you think back on it, it's like the what if. But I do that. You do that with every match, right?
Right.
What if? Like, what if I was more mentally tough? What if I would have just attacked it? What if? All that stuff. So
let's not forget either that how is it, Taymazov? Is that how you say it?
Taymazov.
He was in the Olympic finals for 16 straight years. Obviously, now we know he was on he was on some type of performance-enhancing drug. Not a surprise if you look at this specimen. How freaking strong was this guy? And, like, did he feel different?
Yeah, so it wasn't even like the strength that felt different. It was like the body composition. Like, he hurt to touch. Like you club him, and it would hurt your hand. And every time you would down block, he'd hurt whatever you down blocked with. It just, like, he was like, so his body was so hard, it just hurt to touch. It wasn't like he was, like, so astronomically strong, but it was bizarre, because I remember, like, when I grabbed his, like, trap, like, to thumb block, and then he kind of, like, faked, and it almost broke my thumb off. And I was like, what is this thing? Like, but I had beat him the year before, and it was, we wrestled the whole 6, but that's like, in the third period, I slipped my leg out of the clinch, and I had 30 seconds to defend, and he's shooting, and I'm down blocking with my head, and every time he's hitting me, my head's hitting his or his shoulder or whatever I'm down blocking, it's like jarring my neck. And so, like, literally I started to feel it. So right after the match, I'm like, oh my God, like, I think I did something bad to my neck. And so, like, by the time my semis roll around, my head's, like, pretty stiff. I can't really finish. I go to 2 clinches. I lose to the guy who I beat in the quarters the next year. He gets both clinches. I'm in on his leg. He chest locks me out. Like, I get a stinger, can't hold on. So, and then by the time my bronze rolls around, it was against the guy who eventually got silver in the Olympics, who I beat at the World Cup, who also lost his medal for doping, and he's a freak. He looks like a freaking monster. We go to a third period. He gets clinched, but again, it was like I couldn't do anything. My neck, and it was one of the injuries that, like, was very bizarre, because it, like, carried on. So after those 2011 Worlds, it wasn't until the 2012 Eureka, so like January 29th, so end of September to January, every time I drove to the right with my neck, I'd get a stinger. every time. Like I literally thought for months that like my career was never gonna be the same because it was like every time. And I'm a shooting heavyweight, so it's like, am I gonna have to stop shooting? Am I, like, you go through your heads like, but it was so bizarre because I remember it was the first day of Urigan training camp. We go to Ossetia. We're training with the Russians for like, I think like 7 or 8 days before we go to Urigan. And it was like, we get there first day, we sauna, we roll around, boom, I drive, stinger. Again, just like normal. And I'm just like, frick, dang it. Always, every single shot, every single drill, stinger. So either small or big, it was just always there. And then I wake up the next day, it's gone, never came back. So it was like one of those like,
what?
But it literally stuck around from September, from the Taymazov match until end of January. But yeah, it was like one of those things where it was like, I thought it was going to be my life. And then suddenly never happened again. So it was like super weird.
Something about that Caucasus region, man, Ossetia, Dagestan. That's like the wrestling gods must have been with you out there, because that's a special place, obviously, and that is a unique story. I was going to ask you what the crazy story about the Grega was, but I'm guessing that's it, that you got there and just this injury goes away.
Well, I'll tell you. So I said a bizarre experience. So I go out. I'm in the finals of Urigan against Akhmedov, who actually is now the Olympic champion of 2008 because Taymazov got that one taken away as well. And I make the finals, season finals, and sitting around with Zeke Jones before, and he says, "Can you believe they asked me if you wanted to throw this match and they said for all, so if they said they would pay me all 3 podium spot money. So the first, second, and both bronze money if I throw this match." And so I go, well, what'd you say? And he goes, I said, heck no. And so I'm like, yeah, whatever. And so that just got in my head. Like when the second he told me that, I just thinking like, okay, this is obviously an important match. They're gonna screw me regardless. And so the fact that they were willing to walk up to my coach and say, can you throw this match? Like that instantly. And again, I mean, I didn't have the wherewithal to just go like it is what it is, just go scrap. But so now I'm freaking, I'm on high alert. I'm freaking the heck out, and it just got to me. Like I go out, I take them down. They're action, like I'm trying to hold lead. And, I look at the clock and he freaking arm drags me, wins 1-1. Then, he gets, we get in the clinch. I lose the clinch. So it's like,
I hate the clinch. Oh my God. I hate those old rules, dude. Jesus.
I hate that. Those are the dark ages of our sport. 100%.
God. And so, man, I don't think people realize how corrupt FILA used to be. And I think there's still some shenanigans that's going on, but hopefully it's gotten better. But I mean, how commonplace was it back then for like a Cuban to take second on purpose just to get all the money, or just kind of those throwing of matches in general?
Oh yeah. Well, so I wrestled in this Bundesliga in Germany with my Bulgarian passport. And the interesting thing is we had all heard of it, and we're like, yeah, it happened. We'd assume like it happens all the time. But it's funny because I talked to some of the Bulgarian guys that were on those teams with me, and they said, I don't know if you remember Radoslav Velikov. He's who got the bronze medal in 2008 behind Cejudo. Cejudo beat him first round. Okay. He was a world champion, Bulgarian guy. He's good, really good wrestler. And so he goes, if a Cuban loses to Turkey, Azerbaijan, or Russia at any moment, he said it's not 100% that they sold the match; it's 1,000%.
Man.
So he said Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Russia have like a lot of money in their delegation. He says it's not just a guarantee; it's definite. So definitely, it wasn't just us. It wasn't just us that thought that way, right?
You look at Romero Satiev in 2000. I like to think that wasn't one of them, because those two are so freaking good. I would have loved to see them scrap. But I mean, you just said it, man. A Cuban versus a Russian at the highest stakes, Sydney Olympics 2000. I mean, God, it's just crazy to think that was so commonplace.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre, but yeah, but I mean, you can't blame. I mean, if you've ever been to Cuba, you can't blame. I mean, it's like they're using just like we use our gifts and we get rewarded for it. They use their gifts, they don't get rewarded for it, so they find their own reward, right? I mean, it's
right.
They live in shacks. It's very, very impoverished.
Dude, speaking of Cuba, what do you think of this Anthony Ichimita character? How solid is this kid?
Who's that?
The kid who Anthony Ichimita. He's from Arizona. He won Fargo.
Oh, the Fargo kid.
Yeah,
the Fargo guy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a bunch of stories floating around on him. He's like 23. He's been on this, but yeah, I thought it's just. I mean, all I know is his story is crazy. His story is pretty cool.
Crazy story.
And he's also a pretty darn good wrestler. He was impressive.
Yeah, no question. Now, Tervel, just really 3 rapid fire questions here. Then we'll let you go. The first one for me is, when you guys think about, Snyder versus Sadulaev, obviously you're Snyder's coach. He's going to be the best we've ever had. Like, what about Sadulaev makes him so unique as a wrestler?
I mean, I think that, he's just a really good mix. He's a really good mix of things that win. He's extremely fast, explosive. He's a tough man. He's got a lot of grit, and his technical understanding is extremely high. So I just think that those 3 things, stuck on anyone, are going to do a lot of winning. And so obviously he's got some uniqueness to his build. He's got short legs, long torso. His feet are far away all the time. They're very fast because they're a little shorter than people's. And he uses his body mechanics to his advantage. But I mean, don't get it twisted. He's extremely tough man. And so he's willing to wrestle really hard. And so, but so is Snyder. And so that's why it's such a unique match, because I think that that Snyder is extremely, I mean, I think he's the best at that.
Yeah.
I think he's the best at, he's willing to put the most into a wrestling match. I think Sadulaev has very creative technique, but it's going to be a scrap. And so as of right now, we know that he can win the minute and a half battle, but he still has not beat Snyder in a 6-minute battle. And so I think that, that's going to be the question is, can Snyder extend the match, stay out of the big move? Who can recreate their performance? Can Sadulaev go out and deck him, or can Snyder rough him up for 6 minutes? Right. So, and I'm not saying that if it goes 6 minutes, I'm guaranteeing Snyder. I'm just saying that as of right now, and I know it's in Sadulaev's mind, he still hasn't wrestled Snyder for 6 straight minutes. So it'll be interesting.
And just to your point, when both guys go in with such an elite mindset, like 0.001 of 1%, where they both know they're going to have to push themselves to that level, both of those guys have it. And that's what's so exciting about that matchup.
Yeah. I mean, that's cool.
And
fun
then
to watch.
It's going to be awesome. And I said too, Marv, we'll just wrap up with this, though. I mean, you look at your life, and God only knows how different it would be if you didn't get involved with wrestling. And obviously the theme of this podcast is wrestling changed your life. Like, how would you, if you look back on your career, how would you say wrestling has most impacted you, and what's kind of the lasting effects for you?
Well, obviously it's my career. I mean, I'm a wrestling coach. I love my life. I love my experiences. It's something that I was, fortunate enough to become, pretty elite in as far as my understanding, and something I really enjoy. And so the fact that it mixes that way is really cool. But I would say the biggest way is, I mean, I think it's a really special sport to me, because I think God really used it to, reveal himself to me and just reveal myself to myself. I think it was a sport that was introduced to my life to, and showed me who I was, and I didn't like the person I was. And I I was able to change. I was able to change the person I was. And in doing that, I think it gave me a humility. I think it was a sport that gives you a humility, and with a humility comes a kindness, and I think, and that's one of the things that I believe is, that I cherish, is it made me a kinder person. I wasn't a very good person when I was younger. And I think that the perspective wrestling, the hardships, the reality that, I put everything into something and didn't achieve my dream, that people were holding me accountable. There was people that were beating me. There was people that could beat me. But along the way, I did have some success and was able to get excited about certain things. Just gave me a humility and a kindness to approach other people with. I think that it gave me, like a lot of successful athletes take the route of, now because I'm good at this sport, I am better than you. They treat people like they're better than them because they reached an elite level. I think wrestling did something different for me. I think that I could, I just value people differently. I value myself differently. I don't want people to value me because I was good at wrestling. I want them to see past that. And that's how I see people. And so I think it really just changed my worldview.
Powerful stuff, man. And it's something where the elite of the elite, sometimes they go a different way, but they're usually very calm and just accepting because they put so much into it that they're comfortable with who they are. So I think that's definitely the case with you, and can't wait to watch the future, man. You are one of the top coaches in the country, and with that new facility you guys have out there, it's going to be awesome for many years to come. And best of luck at the Worlds and the NCAAs and the Olympics in the next 12 months here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the blessing.
No problem. Take care.
Bye-bye.
That's the end of this episode, but definitely not the end of the show. For more episodes, please go to wrestlingchangemylife.org. Subscribe to us on iTunes. Give us a star rating. Show the love, baby. Show the love. Thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Peace.